Hey Watchers, today's episode features the first full-length film from writer-director Rian Johnson, who has come to be known for his interesting and innovative storytelling. So put on your ugliest pair of shoes and get ready to hit the pavement, because it's time for 2005's neo-noir mystery film, Brick. Welcome to the Midnight Watch Podcast, the show where we discuss classic, cult, and modern classic movies.
We're your hosts, Jeremy and Josh Baruto, and we review movies that are at least 10 years old. Fair warning, we're big on spoilers here, straight from the get-go.
We rate these movies in 4 categories. Number 1, the level of impact and success it had when it was released. Number 2, how relevant is it today? Number 3, our own personal enjoyment of this movie. And number 4, is it a midnight watch?
What is a midnight watch? It's a film which completely captures your attention, drawing you in. No matter what time or what part you start watching the movie, you have to finish it.
She's a brick. That's every time I hear the word brick, I'm always like, house. Okay, anyways, this is Brick, directed by Rian Johnson, written by Rian Johnson, starring Rian Johnson. No, it's not. The budget was $450,000, and the box office was $3.9 million. That's how you do it when you come out with an independent film. That's what I'm talking about, man. That was legit. I would say this was a breakout role for Joseph Gordon-Levitt. I mean, he's around. He was known before as a comedic actor, specifically for Third Rock from the Sun, and then he was he was in goofy parts of 10 Things I Hate About You.
Yeah, well, and I think at first he was known as a child actor because he was in Angels in the Outfield.
Oh, I forgot about that. Yeah. Where'd you put the nachos? I'm saving them for later.
Which is funny because when I watched this movie, I didn't realize that was him.
I totally forgot about that.
Back in the day, that is. And
I watched this movie because, let's finish before that. It's starring Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Nora Zehetner, Lucas Haas, Noah Fleece, Matt O'Leary, Emile de Ravine. I think that's how you say her name. It's Emily or Emile?
I think it's just Emily.
Okay, fine. It's Emily. Emily de Ravine. I should know. I had a crush on her when that show Lost was out. And a bunch of other really good actors. So, anyways, the first time I saw this movie actually was... I'm just thinking about it right now. I don't remember exactly when I saw it, but it had to be before 2007. Because 2007 was when The Lookout came out, and by then I was a Joseph Gordon fan because I saw this movie and I was like, oh, this guy's cool. I need to check this out because I just remembered him from Third Rock from the Sun. So This was the movie where I was like, oh, this guy's a serious actor. And then I watched The Lookout after that, which we may review that sometime. Did you ever see that movie?
Man, I can't even think what it is.
It's a bank heist, and he's a janitor at the bank, and so the bank robbers become friends with him before so that he's the in man, and so he becomes the lookout, but then things go wrong.
No, I don't think I've seen that one. We may have to check that one out.
All right. Yeah, so that was the first time I saw this, though, because I didn't know, of course, who Rian Johnson was. I don't know if he had really done anything. I think that was the only thing he had done at the time, because then later, of course...
For the most part, yeah.
Right, because then I saw Brothers Bloom, and then I saw Looper. I loved Looper. Right. I thought that was freaking legit. So
it's funny. I didn't even realize he had done Brothers Bloom, and I saw that movie right when it came out, and I enjoyed it. But all I knew was when Looper came out, everybody was like, "Oh, it's by the guy that did Brick." I was like, "Oh, sweet, I love Brick."
Right.
And then later, as I'm looking at his filmography, I'm like, "Oh, he did the Brothers Bloom. That's cool."
Right.
That's a weird movie.
That's a very weird movie. But yeah. Anyways, when's the first time you saw this?
So I was trying to think of that too. With you, I think it had to have been probably 2007 because I remember I had just started at Southwest, and I would stop at the library on the way to work because I was working PMs, and I would pick up a stack of DVDs.
Oh yeah.
And I don't remember. I feel like somebody told me to watch this movie. I don't know if it was you. Had to have been you, because I really didn't know anyone at work yet. I was pretty new. So you must have told me to watch this, and I got it, and it was one of my first kind of introductions to this is an indie movie. And not that I hadn't seen indie movies previously and liked them, but this one I kind of went into it knowing that it was an independent film. And this was definitely one of my first introductions to it. And it definitely made me a fan of independent film.
Yeah, no, I think the reason actually that I saw it with this movie is because I saw the poster for it and I was like, oh, that's kind of cool looking. And then Lost was out, so I knew who Emily DeRaven is. And so I was like, oh, she's in this movie. I'm going to check this out. And then, of course, she's like dead in the first 5 seconds of the movie. Kind of missed the plot on that one.
Right.
And so, but then I stayed for, I came for Emily and I stayed for Joseph. It was,
there you go.
Yeah.
You can't, dude, you can always do with a little more JGL in your life.
Absolutely. Except for, was that Don John movie? Did you ever see that one?
Don Juan?
Don
No,
Juan?
I haven't. I've heard some people loved it and others not so much.
I was not a fan, but it's definitely for a certain demographic.
Sure. Fair enough.
Yeah.
Yeah, I realized too that your girlfriend that you had a crush on, and I didn't know this at the time because I hadn't watched the other show yet, or probably hadn't even come out yet, but she plays Belle in that ABC show Once Upon a Time.
I don't think I made it that far into the
character.
show. Yeah. I don't think, was she in season 1?
I don't remember if she shows up then or season 2.
It's probably
Fairly early, but it could be season 2.
I think I ghosted that show earlier because number one, I didn't have kids at that time, and I don't think I had a girlfriend at that time too, so I didn't watch it. But I was all about.
My wife definitely wrote me into this one, so
and
then I got hooked.
I was into Grimm. I thought that was a sweet show.
I did like that show too.
Yeah. Until it got weird. Anyways, back to Brick.
Back to Brick.
House. So I'm probably gonna
Whole episode, folks.
the whole episode. Shout out to the Commodores. Anyways. All right, let's go ahead and hit that synopsis before we dive deep into this mystery film.
Before we hit the bricks.
Too soon.
Too soon. Okay. And thank you, Wikipedia. High school student Brendan Fry discovers a note directing him to a payphone where he receives a call from his terrified ex-girlfriend, Emily Kostic, begging for help. She mentions a brick, tug, and the pin before abruptly hanging up, apparently afraid of a passing black Ford Mustang, from which a distinctly branded cigarette is thrown. Unable to locate Emily, Brendan enlists his friend Brain for help. An encounter with another ex-girlfriend, Kara, leads him to a party held by flirtatious upper-class girl Laura Dannon and her boyfriend, Brad Bramish. Laura points Brendan to Dode, who arranges a meeting with Emily. Emily dismisses the phone call and tells Brendan to let her go. Brendan steals her notepad and finds a note that leads him to her dead body in a tunnel the following morning. Distraught, Brendan decides to investigate her murder, hiding the body to avoid police intrusion. Brendan discovers that the Pin is a secretive local drug baron. As Brad is a frequent drug user, Brendan picks a fight with him, hoping to attract the Pin's attention. Later, a man wearing a beanie attacks Brendan. Brendan sees the black Mustang in a parking lot and tries to break into it. He is beaten up by the car's beanie-wearing owner. Rather than fight back, Brendan repeatedly asks to meet the Pin. This man is Tug, the Pin's main enforcer, who reluctantly takes Brendan to the Pin's house. Brendan asks the Pin for a job, and the Pin says he will investigate him and either hire him by the next day or have him beat up. Laura reveals herself and drives Brendan back to school. She explains that Emily stole a brick of heroin after being rejected by the Pin's operation. Laura offers to help Brendan, but he distrusts her. The next day, Brendan learns that the Pin has hired him. Dode calls Brendan and says he saw Brendan hide Emily's body. Believing Brendan is the murderer, he threatens to ruin him. Brendan meets the Pin, who suspects that Tug is planning to betray him. At the Pin's house, Tug tells Brendan that the Pin recently bought 10 bricks of heroin. He quickly sold 8 wholesale. The 9th was stolen and later returned contaminated, and the final brick remains to be sold. The Pin arrives and says that someone wants to meet to discuss Emily, revealing that Tug was romantically involved with her. Brendan intercepts Dode on the way to the meeting and discovers Emily was pregnant when she died. Dode believes it was his baby. Brendan passes out from his accumulated injuries and arrives at the meeting late, where Dode is demanding money to reveal who killed Emily. Tug goes berserk and shoots Dode in the head, then threatens the Pin, who walks away as Brendan faints again. Brendan awakens in Tug's bedroom, and Tug tells him they are at war with the pin. Brendan arranges a meeting between the two and waits in Tug's bedroom. Laura comforts him as he grieves Emily, and they kiss. Brendan recognizes her cigarette as the same brand that was dropped from the Mustang during the call with Emily. At the meeting, chaos erupts when it is discovered that the 10th brick is missing. Tug beats the pin to death while Brendan flees, escaping just as police arrive. As he goes, he passes the partly open trunk of Tug's car, where he has placed Emily's body to ensure that the police blame her murder on Tug. The next day, Brendan meets Laura at the school. Brendan explains that he knows Laura set Emily up to take the fall for Laura's theft of the 9th brick, then manipulated Emily into meeting Tug, who panicked and killed her after she told him he was the father of her unborn child. Brendan has written a note to the school administration stating that the 10th brick is in Laura's locker. Laura vindictively tells Brendan that Emily did not want to keep the baby because she did not love the father, and that Emily was 3 months pregnant when she died, meaning that the unborn child was his. Boy, that's a kick in the junk right there, huh?
Yeah, it is. She called me a dirty word. I love that line.
I know.
Yeah, this movie. So the thing that's interesting about it is the movie, first of all, is played super serious, and I think that's the reason it works. Because, like, if you think about it, this is totally like the Maltese Falcon type of story. Right. Like let's see, it was actually there was a lot of stuff based from the Maltese Falcon. I'm trying to look and see who's the author again. Yeah, Dashiell Hammett. He was really famous with writing about Sam Spade and other people like that.
Right.
He wrote the Maltese Falcon, and so the language in this, like the words they use and things like that, is, to me, it's like that's not high school. That's like clearly like old school 1930s jargon.
Right.
And so the reason though it works is because they play it so serious. They don't like wink at the camera or anything like that. They're just like, no, like this is just how it is. Yeah.
Right.
And
they know what they're doing.
Right. The first time I watched this, I didn't really notice it, but the second time I watched it, it took me a little bit of time to get into it because it's just, to me, it was just kind of strange because it's high schoolers and they're all talking like gangsters and stuff. So, but then like you get into it, and then you really get into it because the synopsis I actually think that synopsis wasn't really. It told you what happened in the movie, but it missed all like the twists and turns and the feel of this movie. And so, like, this movie definitely is a noir film, like hardcore. So if you watch it, like, pay attention, because if you miss like one scene, you might be thrown off for the rest of the movie.
Right. Now, you definitely think this is Humphrey Bogart doing his thing,
right?
In like Casablanca or any of those old, like you said, kind of gangster or detective type films.
Yeah.
It's there all the way. And it's funny because I know Rian Johnson wanted to set it specifically in a high school setting, you know, that period of life, because it kind of, all the drama that happens in high school like that, I mean, it's kind of the same as in those old movies.
Right.
It's very, very similar dynamic, even though, you know, the one is technically adults and the other one is children, but it's the same thing.
Well, the thing that he was quoted for saying was the high school, like, it's not real life. Like, there's a lot of bigger problems. But when you're in high school, that is serious. That is your life. Right. And so that's all that matters.
It's inflated, over the top.
Right.
You know, life or death.
Exactly. Yeah. And which is kind of funny. Like, I get that point of view. I thought that he placed it in high school or at the school because he didn't have money. And so he had to, like, just figure out what he had, and so then he did that. So I don't know if that's the case or not, but I do know though that was the high school that he went to. I wonder where the
alma mater.
I wonder where the budget went on this, because he did graduate from film school, so I don't know if he rented the equipment or if he just paid the actors or what. But it's a really tightly written film. It really shows off his directing style and his dialogue. It's really, really good. And I would say the one movie we talked about, let's see, he did Knives Out, which was the newest one. Did you see Knives Out?
Oh, yeah. Great movie.
I really liked it. I thought it was fantastic. I really like all of his movies except for Star Wars: The Last Jedi, because I'm a Star Wars fan. So
right.
And so,
it's funny because when you do try to watch it as a Rian Johnson film, it's, I don't know, maybe it's a little bit better, but it's just so hard to get past all the Star Wars of it all and just take it for what he was trying to do.
Right. Which
it's tough.
Bottom line, though, I don't blame him for The Last Jedi. I blame the people that greenlit the script and to let him do whatever he wanted to do. So that's another.
Up until recently, I mean, The Mandalorian, really, Jon Favreau. It just, they don't have as good a direction of what they're trying to do, other than just emulate what's already been done.
Right, and now
to copy.
Yeah.
And I think now they're finally realizing that, we need to have real direction. And I love that they technically haven't taken away his other 2 or 3 movies. I guess, or maybe it's a trilogy.
Yeah, the trilogy's still on. Yeah,
right.
It's still
and
on.
I think that's amazing, because if that's his vision, hopefully they'll leave him alone through 3 films. Then we might actually get some really cool Rian Johnson filmmaking.
Yeah.
And Star Wars.
Right.
I think before, I don't know if there was just too much backseat driving too, and again, just not clear enough vision to begin with.
Right.
It was rough.
Well, like, shout out to Dave Filoni, who I personally believe is the new George Lucas. I mean, like, since he created the Clone Wars show and then he's co-creator of The Mandalorian, like him.
Right. No, definitely him and Favreau for sure.
Yeah.
I mean, those are the guys.
I'm a believer. I enjoy Star Wars again, and I just Mandalorian's just it's a great show. So going back to Rian Johnson though, like he has a really distinct style of I wouldn't say cinematography, but I would definitely say his writing style. Like you're reading you're watching the movies, and the way that it's laid out, you're just like, this is really tightly written, and he's a good writer. So
it's like we said in the introduction. I mean, his storytelling is very unique, and you see that story coming across, in the way he's edited together, or like you said, the dialogue.
Yeah.
I mean, you definitely think about, like, even with Looper, it's sci-fi, but it still very much tells a story, and it's intriguing, and the mystery aspect is, he does a dang good mystery story. Same with Knives Out, just not knowing what's happening until the big reveal at the end.
Right. And I like, for example, he does, thinking about it, every movie he's done has been different. Because, like, this was a neo-noir movie. Brothers Bloom was more of like a heist movie with a twist. And then, of course, you got Looper, which is a sci-fi movie. Well, not really with a twist, but it's just sci-fi based off the whole time travel idea. Right. And then, you got Last Jedi, but then, Knives Out is, you got the spin on the whole 10 Little Indians who done it. And it was fantastic. So, yeah, I definitely enjoy his stuff. I think,
And something that he does that I just been kind of realizing as I've thought about these different movies, it's very apparent in Brick, but he is, this sounds goofy, but he is delightfully low tech.
Yeah.
Like, there's just not a lot of high tech anything in his movies. I mean, even in Looper, which is supposedly, futuristic, I mean, even the futuristic guns they're using just are like old and antiquated, and
the blunderbusses.
Yeah. It's just, when it's sci-fi, you can do whatever you want and have all kinds of cool, neat gadgets and stuff. And even for this movie that came out in 2005, it's still very low tech.
Yes.
I mean, yes, payphones were a big deal, but cell phones weren't unheard of, and they made it really it was a big deal that, hey, can you get your mom's cell phone? It's like I sort of, that wasn't really a thing at that point.
Right.
In the world, there's, cell phones, basic flip phones are very common. Most people had one. So the fact that there was really one phone like that in the whole movie, maybe 2, really said a lot, and it really, kicked it back to the old school style. But other than Star Wars, he just, and Knives Out too, it just feels very low tech, and he does it really well. So it's like he's transporting you back in time, but it's technically a modern movie.
Right. Well, he wrote the screenplay in right after he graduated from film school. So that was 97 or something like that. And it took him a long time to get funding for the film to actually make the film. So that makes sense that when he wrote the script that there wasn't as many flip phones as there was when the movie was released. So,
sure. But I feel like while I agree with that, I do also think that it's intentional. Because running for the payphone, and again, there were plenty of payphones around still. They weren't yanking them out like
Right.
You know, I had to point those out to my kids a few years ago. They saw one. They're like, what is that? And, you know, I had to explain what a payphone was.
That is the past, dear children.
Right.
Yeah.
Dad used to have to leave the house with quarters in his pocket so he could, you know.
I remember that. We went camping and you had to drive literally into town to call your girlfriend at the time to talk to her. Yeah. And I was like, there's Josh going off into the woods getting murdered. No.
But no, I think some of that is intentional for him. Because like I said, even looking at Looper and even Knives Out.
Right. No, I definitely agree. So looking at this, I didn't know this, but he apparently based the character of Brendan off of Spike from Cowboy Bebop. I thought that was pretty cool.
Yeah.
Did you ever watch Cowboy Bebop?
I've only watched the first handful of episodes from like season 1, and it's amazing. I love it, and it's just, again, one of those. A lot of us just have a watch list that is a mile long, and it's on that
constantly adding to it.
Unfortunately, and then you come across a good show like Cowboy Bebop, and then I'm kind of into it, and then whatever new thing I was waiting for to come out comes out, and then you forget, and then you're having a conversation with your brother, like a year later, like, oh man, I gotta go back and finish that.
So the hair and the walk was specifically Spike. He didn't fight like Spike, but
right.
Yeah, but I thought that was pretty cool. But his character was based off of that. And, of course, his character was based off of, like, Sam Spade, just the way that he, like, talked and moved around. And I thought that was pretty cool. Also,
and the shoes.
The shoes, yeah.
We got to talk about the shoes at some point, but yes.
Let's dive into the shoes. Yeah, go for it.
The ugliest shoes ever. I mean, they're very... And it's, you know what? That's not fair. The shoes were fine, but... for the time period, it's very throwback.
Yes.
He's running around... I mean, I wouldn't consider him a nerd. I think he was a decently cool kid compared to, the friends he hung out with. But, from the ankles up, he looked fairly normal, except for the glasses. Those little tiny wire rim glasses were also super throwback.
Yes, they were.
Almost spectacle-like. So between that, but then the shoes. But I read as well that the shoes were actually part of him creating the characters for the movies. It was a very unique and distinctive feature for each of the characters to have these kind of old school, very, very old school
galoshes, kind of sort of. Yeah.
Well, I mean, not even galoshes, but just really kind of ridiculous shoes for the time period.
Yeah.
Because everything else they wore was fairly modern-esque, and then the shoes were just 50 years behind.
Right. Well, except for Lucas, the pin, that like outfit that he's got, where he looks like. I looked it up, and it is true. They based that off of the guy from Dark Shadows, that vampire show in the 60s.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and so because I was like, dude, what is this guy wearing? Like, he's like the Count, and
right.
Yeah, it was cool.
My first thought was like it was some kind of a pimp look, but it's not. It's definitely more of like the Count or a vampire,
right?
Kind of a feel.
Dude, I almost laughed out loud the part when like he's first talking to Brendan the Pin, and they're in the Pin's house, and his mom like pours them like apple juice and some like cereal, and she's like, "Here you go," and he's like, "Oh, thank you, it's all perfect." And I was like, at first I was like, "This is a weird scene," and then and then later I was like, "No, that's genius," because that's like if he's in an Italian mafia place. And then like you got your mama who's like making food for the people, and he's like, oh, like, and so it totally makes sense. Everything, if you think of it in an adult manner of like a noir film, all of the scenes totally make sense. But seeing it in high school, then it's funny. Like the call girl who's in the drama class, and the way that she's just like manipulating people, and then you got the femme fatale, which is just the main character. Yeah. It's fantastic. I love how.
Yeah, it's all there, but like you said, it's funny, especially with the pin, because in that in that time frame, you're looking at, oh, this is a dude who's way too old to be still living at home with his mom,
right?
In the basement,
right?
Versus in a gangster movie, it would have been the gangster owns the house, and he's his mom lives with him, and she does all the cooking, and oh, you're getting so skinny, eat some more food,
right?
Kind of a thing, but it's definitely flip flop because of. The time period.
Because of the time period. It's so funny how that works. I totally forgot the whole thing about the cigarette. So then when he looks over and sees the cigarette at the end and realized that Laura, whatever her name is, was it Laura? Sure.
Yeah.
Was that she was in it, and I was like, oh yeah, because I was trying to remember like why did he not stay with her, and I'm like, okay, that's it, because she's the ringer. She's the one person that actually set it up, and so his ex-girlfriend took the fall. So I thought that was
Yeah, I
pretty
was the
crazy.
same way. I couldn't remember either, and then you see that, and you're like, oh snap! But that just shows what a good movie it is too. That it still hooked you and sucked you in, and you know, unless you're one of those. I am not one of those people. My wife is. I think your wife is too, where she can figure out what's going on in the movie super early.
Right.
You know, like that's the bad guy. What are you talking about? You know, I'm just blindly going along for the ride.
Right. It's clearly not. They haven't said he's the bad guy yet. Yeah.
Right.
No, I totally feel you, which is so funny. That's actually it's so funny you mentioned that because I can enjoy movies more sometimes that way because like I don't like my mind just kind of just goes on like we're just going for the ride. And if I can figure out something early, then I've seen too many movies, but then like maybe it's just really blatant and I'm just like, okay, that's not working out too well, which is why I didn't like the remake of The Stand. I couldn't even finish it. I was just not a fan of that. Did you watch it?
Oh, the show?
Yeah.
Yeah. I watched the first episode and it was okay, but not. That is my favorite Stephen King book, so I have such a high bar set for it that I just I might try to go back, but I don't know. I'd rather see it done as a
right. No, it was.
Well, actually, I would rather anyone but CBS did it. It's kind of.
I almost don't blame.
HBO did it or Netflix, maybe. I don't know.
I think personally, if the editing was done differently, the whole like flashback sequences, terrible. But anyways, but yeah, that was one thing where they immediately showed like one of the main bad guys in the first episode, and I was like, the whole point of the book was you didn't know if he was going to be a good guy or a bad guy until he finally decides to become a bad guy, and that was like, you blow that in the first episode, then like where's all of the tension and like the whole.
And he was skinny, which The whole point in the book is that he's fat and then he loses weight and he gains some self-confidence and then you're like, oh, he's going to be a good guy. And then, you know, he turns out to be a dirtbag.
Right. Yeah.
And they kind of went the other way, which I don't know. Like I've only got through the first episode and I didn't really care enough to go beyond it.
There you go. So, yeah.
Oh, I did want to say one more thing about the dialogue.
Yes.
Trinity has been rewatching Dawson's Creek. Did you ever watch that show, or have you seen any of that show?
I've seen the first 2 seasons because I was working through it with my wife because that was one of her favorite shows growing up.
Okay, so this is probably her 3rd or 4th time watching the show, and so I haven't been watching. I've watched it 1 time through with her, and but yeah, she'll have it on in the bedroom and whatever, and I'm doing something else, and I'll be kind of listening, and it has the most pretentious dialogue for a bunch of, high schoolers. Like they're way too smart for their own good and just way too heady. It's ridiculous. No average group of high schoolers, which is what they're supposed to be, would talk like this. So that's just, this movie kind of reminded me dialogue wise of Dawson's Creek, except that in the movie, they know that they're using this 30s and 40s style of dialogue. Yeah. And they're not just being pretentious like they are in Dawson's Creek. No,
they go full in. Like you have to pay attention because they keep referring to the police as the bulls. And like it took me a thick minute to be like, who are they talking about? I was like, is that a rival gang? And then I was finally like, oh no, you freaking moron. No, they're talking about the police.
Right.
No, I thought that was pretty awesome though.
Did you ever watch Baz Luhrmann's Romeo and Juliet?
It's been a while. I have it because I didn't like it the first time I watched it, but then now that I actually enjoy Shakespeare, I will watch it again. So yeah, what do you think about it?
Well, this movie also reminded me of watching that movie back in the day because it was Trinity's old roommate, Beulah, if you remember her. Mm-hmm. She loved this movie, and I saw it several times just back at their apartment.
Yes.
Back before we got married. And anyways, it just reminded me of his way of taking something classic like and really old like Shakespeare and putting it on a modern twist but keeping the original dialogue, and then watching this movie, it just this time through just kind of reminded me of him in that movie.
Well, that's one thing I really like about independent films is they can really play with different stuff because, I mean, number one, they don't know if anybody's going to even see this, so they have to do something that's kind of really stands out, but it gives them complete creative freedom, and I think that's awesome. I mean, for example, I know we're referencing tons of other stuff, but like, for example, the Zack Snyder's Justice League, like he had Final Cut on that, and he didn't get paid to put it together because he had Final Cut. And so, like, that gives you complete creative freedom over your projects. That's pretty amazing. So the fact that Rian Johnson was able to, like, figure out how to shoot this on the lowest budget possible and then went out and then, like, was able to have people donate to to make this film. It was pretty legit, and he got some good actors. Like even at the time, they were still like up and coming actors, you know, but they weren't like nobodies. I mean, there were some people, but like it did really good. I mean, I'm glad that this movie was his breakout hit, because then like now we get to see consistently like what else he's putting out. When you see his movies, you know it's going to be tightly written. You know it's going to go somewhere interesting. And it's going to be good, which, I mean, that's one reason I think I was so disappointed with The Last Jedi, because I was really excited to see what he was going to do with Star Wars.
Oh, me too.
And unfortunately, I think that the lore that was so cemented already boxed him in. So the only thing he could do was punch out, and it was a bad choice. So
it was, and it was kind of the wrong time to do that. It's, you know, they really should have done it in the previous movie to set up the fact that we're not just recreating, you know, the original 3 movies that came out, you know, back in the late 70s, early 80s.
Right. Oh, yeah, absolutely. What else do you got to say about this movie?
Well, I just got to point out that sweet 71 Mustang that goes roaring through this movie, and we just did Bullet a couple episodes back. Also about a sweet Mustang, includes a sweet Mustang. So that was really fun for me. And along with that, something that really jumped out to me was the audio is very visceral in this movie. Just when you hear, like when Joseph Gordon-Levitt's running, he's wearing those kind of wingtip dress shoes almost. Like, I can't call them loafers. I don't know. I'm not thinking of what the type of shoe they are, but they're just very clacky when they hit the ground, and he's running full out so much in this movie, and you just hear it smack, 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 smack. On the pavement as he's running to either get away from someone or catch someone or make it to the payphone in time to answer the phone call. And just so all the footsteps are just, they really stand out in this movie, which is kind of cool. And he definitely takes a beating in this movie. I mean,
oh my gosh.
He's a straight up punching bag.
Right. The thing that's funny is like there's one part when he's laying down or whatever, and Laura's like, hey, you need to keep sleeping. Like oh yeah, he passed out in the car. And then he's like, she's like, you coughed up a lot of blood. And he's like, no, I got to keep going. And it's like, dude, you're hemorrhaging. Like, you're dead. Like, get to the freaking hospital.
Right.
And it's like, he's like, nope, it doesn't work. It's not in the script. Like, and then he's like, fine. He's like, I'll sleep it off. And I'm like, yeah, sure you will. But yeah, that was too funny.
That concussion you probably have.
Right. I did like the one scene that I remember the most from this movie is when the tug jumps in the Mustang and drives off, and it stops at the end of the parking lot.
Yeah.
And then drives right at him, and like Brendan doesn't move, and then they have that cool scene where like his hand, he drives right past him and show his hand like literally the car is like an inch away from his hand.
Right.
Like it almost nailed him going like 70 miles an hour. And like that scene, I was just like, oh, that's cool. I think that was in the trailer, and that's actually like another thing that grabbed me. And yeah, I thought that was cool. And then another thing that impressed me this time was when he's running away from the guy that turns out Brad actually sent him to kill Brendan. When the guy attacks him with a knife, and he's like, they have the chase scene through the high school. Like you were saying, like the shoes being so loud that like he gets the guy to like follow him. So then he like runs around the corner and takes his shoes off, so then he can sneak up on the guy.
Right.
And does
so
that
much
slide
more impactful
the dude trips.
Right. It was so impactful because it was extra silent because he's in his socks, and you know, like we said, all the footsteps and the running is so loud throughout the movie, and it was very impressive, and that part happened.
Right. And this is one thing I love about independent films is they didn't have the budget. So the guy trips over him, flies out of the scene, and it stays on Brendan as his reaction. And then it slowly pans over to what happened to the guy. So like I'm thinking they had enough time to like pull the mattress out of the way and like have him set up on that to look like he ran into that pole. And so they didn't have to show that. And that's one thing I love about independent films is like when they're on such a budget that they definitely are like, I have to think really creativity. And sometimes budget constraints like really brings out the best in those shows.
Absolutely. No, I think that is a very key thing with a lot of indie filmmakers. I mean, at least the good ones, I would say, because that's always very much intriguing me, especially during that time period. Like I said, when this came out, and I was very aware of independent films. I mean, you know what? I gotta take that back a little bit, because I remember being really into Robert Rodriguez and watching the first Mariachi movie.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, it's not a great movie, but it's really cool to watch from a filmmaking point of view and seeing what he did to get the shots that he needed. And that guy had like no budget.
Yeah.
I mean, it was very, very shoestring.
Right. No, El Mariachi is so much fun to watch from a filmmaking standpoint of view. Absolutely. It's not the most entertaining film, but yeah, like you said, though, you nailed it right on the head. Yeah. It's fascinating just being like, how did he do this? Yeah.
Right.
Creative control. And he also directed an episode on The Mandalorian. Throwback.
Yay.
It's
all coming together.
It all comes together in the end. You're dangerous now. That's another line from Brick. So,
you know what I gotta say though? You had said earlier that he's not really known necessarily for his cinematography, but I did feel that this movie did have some really cool shots.
Yes.
That were either framed really well and just were very kind of beautiful to see, even if it was like a B-roll sort of shot. There's one that kind of really stood out to me is at the end of the movie when he's meeting up with, the girl who ends up being the villain. And he's walking, or it's right before he walks onto the football field, and it's in the morning, and there's like a million seagulls on the ground that all take off and fly off, which seems to be a very California thing. Well, one, they're not that far from the ocean, but those rats with wings seem to be everywhere. But anyways, it was just a cool shot, and it just made me appreciate that he does, even though he's more of a storytelling guy, he does have an eye.
He definitely does. I was thinking of like Guy Ritchie or like M. Night Shyamalan.
That's what I mean. What I mean. I feel like it can be overshadowed, especially when you look at other guys who are all about the cinematography and cool edits and just capturing these great takes. But anyways.
But he's got such a good. He's a great craftsman in the way that he puts it together, and I really respect him for that. Like this is one of the earlier independent films as well that I watched that I just was like really started to bring me in. This is the first independent film where I was like, that was cool. Like, what other movies are out there that are independent film? And I'm glad that you picked this movie. And this is I think this is our first independent film that we reviewed. I don't know if we.
Yeah. And I know we've discussed this. For a long time now, we have loved independent film. It's very important to us. So we're hoping that we can take this podcast and try to elevate independent film to more people. And not that kind of like from an underground hipstery kind of way. It's not like we're trying to blow these films up or want independent movies to get like massive attention. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with that. We want these people to be successful, and we just definitely would like to kind of carve out a little bit more space in our podcast to showcase great independent film.
Right, because that's what we're
hopefully get some more independent filmmakers on. And who knows, maybe we'll even do some stuff that's kind of off our rule is that, we only do movies that are at least 10 years old or older, but when it comes to indie film, maybe we'll bend that rule a little bit.
Yeah, we'll see what happens as the year goes on. I don't think I have anything else about this movie. I'm trying to think of something else about it. It's fun. I really enjoy that it really keeps your attention because you're trying to figure out what's going on, and the dialogue really keeps you pulled in.
It's a classic whodunit. And if there's just one last thing I could say about this movie and the kind of tying it in with other great indie movies is that a good indie movie always seems to have the perfect song that kicks in right when the end credits come on. And it's either just like a cool, jammy indie rock kind of sound, or I don't know. It's always that to me. That's just kind of iconic when it comes to a great indie film. Usually the opening song is good too, if not the entire soundtrack. But for sure, when those credits roll and it's just punchy and just bam, and it's just like the coolest song. Right. So he delivered on that.
Oh, do you know the name of the song?
Nope. Would have been great if I did.
I was waiting for you to be like, and then this song came up. That was the song of the summer for me.
Right.
Nope.
I really should have done that. I apologize, everyone.
Go watch the movie and figure it out yourself, guys. I did. I will say also too, the music struck me up right at the beginning, like when they have like the theme song playing and they have that weird. Yeah. I'm trying to figure out if that's like bells or whatever that is, like that weird sound. They did a really good job with like the music sounding straight from a noir film as well. Like
lots of trumpet.
Right.
Just it was very period correct, I would say, as far as your classic 30s and 40s noir.
Yeah, if you watch this movie, or actually if you turn the screen off and you just heard it, then you would be like 90% be like, I think I'm watching a 1930s movie.
Right. Black and white.
Right.
It's all there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Anything else before we go into our final verdicts?
Just the fact that somehow Joseph Gordon-Levitt, Brendan, kept those thin, fragile, tiny glasses intact throughout the whole movie. What a masterful job.
He was determined. So yeah, nothing.
Tip of the cap, sir.
Tip of the cap. He pulled a little Bob Balaban there. I was just like, I was like, dang, that's freaking awesome.
But yes, that's all I got.
All right. So yeah, do you think that the movie was a smash hit when it came out, or like what do you think?
I think for the most part, yeah, I gave it an A as far as how it did when it came out. I mean, just looking at it from a budget point of view to the money that it made, it seemed to have pretty decent reviews. Mm-hmm. So I would give it an A.
Yeah, I know.
I saw it kind of. Both of us, I think, saw it fairly soon after it came out, and it seemed to have, for most people we had talked to, seemed to have a lot of positive things to say about it.
Right. No, absolutely. I definitely give it an A as well, because I think that it was pretty well received. It made like way more in its budget, so that was great, and it put Rian Johnson and Joseph Gordon-Levitt on the map. So
totally, yeah.
Let's see. Is it still relevant now? Which I guess we're going to talk about, like, in movie history. I guess we got to say, is it still relevant? Because like pop culture's too wide.
Yeah, because when it comes to pop culture, I can't give it more than a C, just because. I mean, and probably even less because I think it's because it's such an indie film. I don't see it having. I mean, if we're talking Looper, more people would be aware of that, and then of course.
But that's just because. It's newer and it's mainstream when it came out.
Right, exactly. So, but a lot of people that really were excited about Looper was because of Brick. Right. As far as Rian Johnson, being a contributor to, modern film and whatnot, I mean, I guess we got to give it or I would say maybe more of a B. As far as, I mean, I feel like it still holds up pretty well.
Yeah, I give it a B as well, because I always like watching the film, like of good filmmakers, like first movies. Yes. And this one definitely, I definitely think it holds together really well. And I like that it, like the period piece of it it definitely has a turn of the century feel to it. So like the style and all that stuff brings back memories of like when I was in high school. So that was pretty fun. Yeah. But I definitely think that it's good because like I love watching older ones like Following and El Mariachi, other films that like great directors have done, and so just seeing where they've gone. This movie started off like this is a solid flick though for somebody's first film.
I agree, and I think that's why I give it, like you said, especially from a film history point of view and how it's relevant today in film. I think it's definitely a B because it's just a great movie. And I think he was really smart in how he chose his sets and was able to save money, but it worked. It seemed like that was all intentional.
Right.
Shooting it at his old high school, an abandoned house, basically. I mean, that's really the two locations that get used the most in the entire movie, and I'm sure that saved a lot of money.
Right, absolutely. Oh, I did see that the one part where Emily is murdered, that storm drain, like they got permission from the authorities to film there, but the authorities were like, we can't guarantee though that that's safe because like water comes down there randomly because it drains from other areas in the city. So every time they went to go film in there, they're like, okay guys, like we might have to bounce like at any time.
Right.
So that was pretty funny.
Flood warning.
Right. So yeah, I give it a B as well for relevancy because it just really cements him very quickly as like, hey, we need to watch this director and writer. We need to see like where he's gonna go, and he's been, it's fantastic. So personal enjoyment, Josh.
So I gave it a B. I really liked it, and that's a good rating. But it's funny because I was super pumped to watch this. I just remember liking it more, and it might just be not that I disliked it at all. I think I've just seen a lot of other independent movies and whatnot since then, and it just again a B. I mean, that's a good rating. I just kind of thought I was gonna come in on an A, like this is just hit everything I like about independent film. So I give it a B.
Okay, I give it a B as well because honestly, we're just like in sync
I know,
today.
This is
apparently,
kind of weird, man.
Yeah, it's like, wow, we need to have somebody else on the show, apparently.
That's right.
Right. So I give it a B as well, though, because I actually was going back to when you were like, hey, we got to review Brick. And I was like, okay. I was like, yeah, I liked that movie. And I enjoyed it so much more this time than the first time. And I liked it the first time, but like this time just watching it and appreciating it for what he did, just like really getting the dialogue and the weirdness of it. Yeah, I liked it. So I definitely would give it a B for sure. Because the first time I think I was distracted by how much I liked Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and then like I followed his career after that for a while.
Yeah.
And but this time though, just like the storytelling, and I really liked Lucas Haas, who played the Pin. Like I thought he did a really good job.
He did.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so he was fantastic. And yeah, so I give it a B. Is it a midnight watch?
Well, it is not for me. I really like this movie, but it's definitely not one. It's a slow burn kind of, that has like explosive moments of action or violence in it, which don't get me wrong, I really like that.
Right.
But it's just not enough to, keep me up at night. So.
Well, I think that's the beauty of independent films, though, is sometimes they are allowed to run at their own pace. And in this case, I think that this movie it is paced really well, compared to like old school noir films. Like I watched The Maltese Falcon for the first time this year in January, and like really enjoyed it. And so after watching that and then watching this movie only like 2 months later, I guess that was more fresh in my mind. So that's like he was very inspired by that movie and by the writings, of course, of Dashiell Hammett. So.
Right.
So it's not a midnight watch for me either, but I just really enjoyed the dialogue. I don't know, man. It might be a midnight watch.
You gonna give it a half a midnight watch?
Well, it's funny that when the last episode when you're talking about the Mighty Ducks and you're like, I just want to, but there's parts of it I'm like, dude, that's not a midnight watch. Like
I know.
I was like, I'm gonna call it a midnight Josh, where it's like I watch parts of this movie.
That's my wishy-washy vote.
Is it a midnight watch?
It.
It depends on the scene. No, it's not a midnight watch.
Right.
No, it's not a midnight watch for me, but I did enjoy this movie, though. I'm really glad that you picked it, though, because I honestly probably wouldn't have watched this movie again just because there's so much to watch now. But I'm really glad we came back and we revisited this, and I would definitely recommend this movie to watch if you're an independent film fan. If you're a Rian Johnson fan, Joseph Gordon-Levitt fan, or if you're a film noir fan, if you're just a fan of film. If you like California,
you like pretty pictures on the movie screen.
Yeah, moving pictures. All right, where did you watch this delightful motion picture?
This delightful hidden gem was on Prime.
Yes,
Amazon.
Watched
Prime.
it there too.
We both watch it. Yeah.
Yeah, I did see that it's leaving on April 1st. So sorry, suckers, you have to find it somewhere else.
Right.
But definitely check it out. No, it's a really good movie, and that about wraps up today's episode. If you want to check out this movie, we just talked about that. So yeah. Good luck. Special thanks to our sound producer, Jake Coltman. And if you had as much fun as we did,
you want to start over?
Oh, dude, I was running out of air, and you kept trying to be like, start over. And I was like, no. Okay. Let's see. If you had as much fun as we did on this episode, we'd love it if you shared this with your family, friends, and anyone you think would like it.
Please subscribe, rate, and review our podcast. It's found on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, and just about any other platform. Also, we'd love it if you'd visit our Instagram or our Facebook page, and you can find us on both of those at the Midnight Watch Podcast. We have our hashtag, What's Your Midnight Watch? Check that out. If you're ever talking about a movie, even to friends or whoever on Instagram, throw that hashtag on there. We'd love to be a part of it. And you can also directly reach us at the Midnight Watch Podcast at gmail.com.
Nice. Once again.
That's it for now.
Man, excuse me. Thought I went past puberty already. All right, everyone. Have a fantastic week. And as always, keep up the watch.